Welcome to the Wednesday podcast, everybody. My name's Paul, this is Simon. We're missing Jake today, our king of segways, but I think we'll cope without him.
Busy out riding his bike, I think.
We've got a few interesting subjects have cropped up in the last 2 weeks. This has been a while since the last one. A couple of bikes have really caught my attention, your attention. The YETI ASR, the Pinarello track bike.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting.
That looks rapid. The Crankworks Boycott. I really want to get into that. That's been a discussion point downstairs in the workshop. And the future of the YouTube channel. We've got some stuff to celebrate.
Absolutely. Some good news.
Yeah.
Some big numbers.
And finally, we're going to touch on a quote by Ollie from GCN. So I want to get started. So a bike that really caught my eye, and that's a mountain bike, a little bit out of your comfort zone, Simon, but the new YETI ASR. Now, I've got a little bit of history with YETI. Okay. I love YETI bikes. I think they look great.
So when did the first one come out? Was it around 2000 or something?
Oh, God knows. Yeah. Yetis ever since I was like a kid in the 90s and stuff like that, like riding bikes. Like YETI was a thing I couldn't afford. Yeah. You know, like beautiful bikes, and it was like really innovative stuff at the time. I think most mountain bikes have offered and aspired to own a YETI at some point. Normally, the reality of ownership is quite different.
Yeah, I can imagine. Like most bikes.
Actually, quite similar to Pinarello's. Actually, look fantastic when you sort of dig under the skin. They're always a little bit.
For a non-mountain bike fan, when I started to look at this bike in advance of today's podcast, I was quite impressed by it. Actually, particularly all the engineering on it, which I'm hoping we're going to touch on.
Yeah. So what caught my eye was that they said this is different. They're trying to do a cross-country bike that blends into like a trail bike. I think this is actually really interesting because it got me thinking, people that are riding trail bikes now, which are like normally 140, 160, or even enduro bikes more than that, I think that market is gravitating quite quickly towards e-bikes. And if you're spending that sort of a money, you probably want it to come with a motor these days.
I can imagine so, yeah. For the sort of terrain you're covering and the distances you're going over.
That's the trend that I'm seeing, I think. Yeah. Whereas the cross-country lightweight mountain bike, I think is still a very sporty thing. People want to do it there for their fitness and get some miles in. Cross-country bikes, race bikes, were always very fragile.
Well, this one struck me in terms of hitting that balance. I mean, for somebody who's not really been into this, I was almost inspired thinking, yeah, this is a bike I could actually buy because it kind of ticks a lot of my buttons in terms of raciness and, you know, just that the engineering details is phenomenal. I mean, hopefully you're going to touch on some of this in a bit more detail. In terms of what they've done with this bike and the way they've got the weight at where it is. I mean, it must make that pretty compelling in terms of a bike of this weight.
Yeah. Gives you like a 120 millimeter trail bike with some, I wouldn't say it's relaxed geometry in terms of trail, but it's not full race geometry. Yeah. Well, it sits really in between, but they've got the weight right down, so it almost gives you that nippy sort of handling. I really want to try one because this is sort of gives you that nippy, lightweight feel of a cross-country bike, but with a bit more stability and confidence-inspiring ride of a trail bike.
Well, that's what I was saying, because I mean, I think there was a quote, was it just right in terms of bottom bracket height? I mean, it's the bottom bracket's positioned just high enough so you can pedal through those kind of rocky areas, but low enough to sit below the axles for kind of that rail-like cornering. I mean, that's one of the things I was picking up. I thought, okay, interested. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think it gives us a coveted in-bike feel is the quote, I think.
Yeah.
Whatever that means, you know. So.
It is actually, bottom bracket ride is a big thing because the cross-country riders tend to want it quite low down, centre of gravity, that sort of thing, where they normally have to heighten it up to get over rock clearance and things. But the other thing that really struck me is actually the suspension is actually a very simple swing arm setup. There's very little to go wrong there, which is unusual for YETI.
This is the flex days in terms of,
The flex days, quite a lot of brands have done flex days before. Cannondale famously were the ones to do it, but it takes away that pivot down at the chainstay and seat stay interface. But it brings the shock up nice and high as well, but only a single pivot down low. So I like keeping it simple because
that's what appealed to me when I was looking at it and thought it was a bike to ride.
Yeah.
Just that simplicity, but also then I get the sense, again, not being an expert on this subject, in terms of the general sort of travel is increasing on these cross-country type bikes.
Cross-country used to be 80, 90, 100 mil of travel, and that's now a race-ready 120 mil of travel, which I think you could go to a trail centre and ride some pretty gnarly stuff with some skill and have a right good time on it. Its competitor to me is probably the Rocky Mountain Element. Again, really high-quality frame, but much slacker geometry, much more towards the trail side, and probably a little bit too far that way if you want something nice and nippy. So Yeah, I'm going to see if I can call up Yeti and get a demo of this because
Well, actually, I would. I've never ridden one of these bikes, but I would go and ride this bike from what I saw.
Yeah.
And I mean, some of the engine. I mean, just simple things like little mud flap behind the bottom bracket. They've got a little mud flap there, which stops all the dirt coming up. I don't know whether you noticed that there.
Yeah. Yeti have always been famous for little details like that. Actually, that's one of the little appeals to them.
And the cable port door, obviously with the kind of easy for servicing and the routing, the cables, etc. I mean, just little details there.
So Yetis have always been good for that, to be fair. That's the thing that makes them desirable. When you look at a Yeti from the outside, they've always got little details like that on them and makes them really desirable. The reality of owning one, once you get them inside, they're not quite right, but they are normally very good at all their little attention to details and bits and pieces like that. So.
And what size wheels do they? Is it like 29 inches?
29 inch is pretty standard on this sort of thing now. And to be honest, I can see why you're intrigued by it, because if you came from a road, gravelly type background and you wanted to get into mountain biking, going straight to a cross-country bike would probably feel quite skittish, a little bit scary, a bit like me getting on a time trial bike. Whereas this probably blends it. This would be my equivalent of a friendly time trial bike.
Yeah, no,
it's a good way of putting it.
Was it this triple lock where you could set the different lockings, like you could be going along and just lock it, and then you're in sprint mode, and that I can't remember what they called it. What do they call the
remote lockouts?
Remote lockouts. The three position twist lockout.
Yeah, I think anyone here knows the reality of that is that they normally break, and it's the first thing to break in your suspension.
It looked pretty cool.
But it's. I mean. The whole bike as a build, I'm not that interested in. The frame, I think, is going to be really cool. Yeah. It's a $4,000 frame. I've not seen a UK price on it yet. So,
well, I saw it was $3,799 when I looked it up, actually. So,
all right, okay. So it's it's high, but there's a lot worse out there. It's I'm going to try and get my hands on one. I think this is.
We'll
like
get two of them. We can have a little race them for.
It's I'm more like say I think this.
But which model? Just the frames that then you would go for, or if you had a configured one, because obviously there's the ASRT, the ASRT3, etc., etc.
In actual fact, actually, the breakdown of their fully built bikes isn't that bad, actually. But I don't know what it is with road bikes at the moment. But if you try and buy a fully built bike, the value isn't there. But some of these models are coming with the SRAM transmission, and still expensive, but it would still be cheaper to buy the fully built bike. As opposed to buying it a frame only, which is something we're not seeing in road at the moment. So the value of all that suspension and stuff seems to be there. I don't know. The base specs, there's nothing wrong with them at all. Like solid DT twist, RockShox, SRAM transmission. It's not much of a change really. I'd be like, it's a big tick box.
So what did they put on DT Swiss 180 hubs on these?
I haven't looked that closely into the specs, I have to say, but I'm intrigued to see where this category goes more than anything else.
And where do you see? I mean, obviously, somebody racing would be a bike for them, I guess. But more kind of that general market you were talking about at the beginning. Then,
I think this is genuinely, potentially, haven't ridden one yet. Potentially a bike that you could take to a race and still thrash it around a trail centre, and have a good fitness ride out of it. Not like you're trying to lug a big heavy enduro bike around a red route or something like that. I think it's something you could really just go and
put that on my tick list.
Thrash. Go and give your legs and lungs a thrashing on. Right, talking of giving your legs and lungs a thrashing, the Pinarello time trial bike, it is Olympic year, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So these are going to come thick and fast, I think. These time trial track bikes are going to go nuts. So, I mean, it does look quite special. I
must admit, I do have a kind of a leaning towards time trial bikes, and anything that looks super fast and super aerodynamics, it just kind of appeals strongly to me. And obviously, this is based off the Bolide FHR, which was the first 3D track printed bike, if I recall correctly, that Philip Ganna used for his hour record. So this is now 3D printed. And I think it's from, I wasn't familiar with this, but it's called Scamaloy, which is a new high-strength alloy, which is made from scandium, aluminium, and magnesium. So,
interesting.
Pretty interesting.
Of course, Bradley Wiggins famously had those titanium 3D printed handlebars, didn't he? That's where that technology has come so quickly. Custom-made handlebar. I mean, those handlebars just look like so space age. It's absolutely incredible.
But I think one of the key things with the design as well was that because the UCI had removed this 3-to-1 ratio rule, which means that the frame can feature more aerofoil sections on the bottom bracket, on the wheel hubs, and which now obviously can perform at a higher level. With those longer and slimmer, which is supposed to reduce the frontal area.
Yeah, they've got down here, they're sometimes using 8-to-1 ratios somewhere in this frame, keeping everything quite narrow. What struck me a little bit was it's a very different design philosophy to the Hope Lotus bike, which has gone very, very wide, lots of clearance for all the air to flow in. This actually looks like wrapped.
Well, I think I was reading again, and they were quoting, so obviously aeroframe design and the track particularly going towards these wider forks and wider seat stays, which is theoretically minimises the drag of the bike and the rider. However, Pinarello have kind of said this research isn't really totally conclusive, I believe, and now they've opted for a more conventional approach, narrower forks, seat alloy, because obviously that's saving on weight, so they don't believe there's a trade-off worth doing at this point in time.
What's really bold on it, they said the fastest bike in the world. I'm like, the Olympics haven't happened yet.
Well, I guess it depends who's riding it as well, but yeah.
It's like you better hope you win some races if you're making claims like that.
But it's the attention to detail on that. I don't know whether you noticed well, but on the seat tube and seat post, they've got this pattern. It's called like aeronodes, and these aeronodes are basically inspired by tubercules, which are found on the flippers of humpback whales. In case you didn't know that.
There we go.
And this is theoretically, is claimed to reduce the complex vortexes that would be generated around the rider's leg movements, and again helps improve airflow and speed through the air. So.
I love this stuff. I'm a massive Formula One fan, and I love the fact that they just go right into like the coating on the seat post.
Well, the price point. I mean, I think the price point is about €29,000. I think just for the frame set. So.
Yeah, and it's one of those price points where British Cycling did this, didn't they? When they were having that massive track winning year, where you could theoretically own the bikes. That's part of the rules. Isn't it?
You have to be able to be available to sales of the general public.
Yeah, and I remember on the British Cycling website, theoretically, you could buy with a British Cycling track bike, but you wouldn't.
But this is an absolute bargain if you compare it to the Factors bike that Australia team are using. I think they're quoting $59,000 or near $60,000. So I think I'll go with Pinarello personally. But,
there's still some bikes to come out as well in this market as well. Argon 18 and Look, obviously famous players in this situation. We haven't seen what they're revealing. Zip haven't launched anything yet, nor have Karima. Again, big players in this track bike TT thing. I mean, interesting. It's going to be.
That's the good thing about the Olympics and events like that. It really accelerates some of the technology, and that can then. Oh, we're talking about high-end bikes, and some people think, well, how does that apply to me? But that technology then trickles down into the more kind of regular bikes.
Once they've got this technology sorted, I bet you'll see that on the sort of the next time trial bike, and then that will be on the next road bike.
Absolutely.
Are we going to street Airstream technology on the Pinarello Dogma in 4 years' time? That's a hell of a thing. Right, talking about competition, Crankworx.
Yeah, very interesting.
So if you don't know already, you might have seen our latest video. Jake Atkinson, who used to be our apprentice and mechanic down here, he was on his rookie season at Crankworx, and we were all ready and waiting to watch him complete, and it didn't happen.
That was supposed to be Sunday midnight our time, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Yeah. And it didn't happen. Controversially, the entire men's field decided to boycott the event under sort of various things, quoting sort of rider welfare, appearance fees, kind of hit the media quite a bit. And then, of course, the women's event, which we'll get into in a second. But the boycott for me, when I read it, I was like, "Ooh, poor Jake. He's in a really tricky situation here." And I read through all the letters.
Because he just qualified as Rookie of the Year.
In fact, if you guys don't know, Jake qualified as Rookie of the Year, and the prize for winning Rookie of the Year by doing all the bronze, silver, gold events was that he won an all expenses paid trip to Crankworx. So ironically, Jake as the rookie probably had more rider welfare than all of the riders that are normally on the tour, the Crankworx tour, but then obviously needed to show some sort of solidarity with his
feel for him. It must have been
peers.
very tough, and I can't imagine what he was thinking, because obviously the more older, experienced kind of guys in this group, they're probably leading the way, I would guess. And then what do you do as the new guys qualified? You follow suit. How strongly do you want to air your views? It must be a very tough situation.
Oh yeah, I'm so proud of him, how he's handled himself. It must be really, really tricky. And we saw him in the background of some of the women's event and stuff, and it's like he looked like he was having the time of his life and stuff. So,
and I mean, I'm not close enough to really judge who's in the right or wrong, but I think it's on both sides. I mean, clearly it's important that the rider welfare and safety, and one of the things I didn't see a lot of, but I understand, is that the course wasn't really ready in time for them to get the practice time in they needed to ensure that they could then compete, relatively safely, knowing the course.
From what I'm reading, I think that was the straw that broke the camel's back. Was like everyone made so much effort. Everyone's been training all over the winter. They've had to spend a lot of their own money to get there, find their own hotels, find their own way from the hotel to the venue. And then when they're hungry, they've got to leave the venue and go and find their own food and then make their way back to the venue.
Well, that's a really interesting point, because I was kind of Googling just to see what was going on. And there was a rider's statement document. And I think, just to quote the last thing, when there's a buffet for the Crankworx members, but absolutely no catering at all for riders, the statement says something is drastically wrong. And I would kind of concur with that. And I think you could say, well, the riders are all being sponsored to be there, they can afford it. It's not so much that, it's the time it takes. Is they've got to it's not just, you've got to leave the venue. It's not just the money,
it's
the practicalities of, if you're on site, you're practicing and everything's available for you there in terms of your welfare, your food, etc. You can then focus on what you're there to do. But if you're having to run back into town to get some food or go from this hotel to there, it really eats into your day. And these are professional athletes that need to be, you wouldn't expect our Olympic athletes to be behaving in this way. They'd be in a village and everything looked after, etc.
Exactly. So. And I think the courses, you're asking these guys to perform at the highest level. They scary big jumps, and they're not just going to just take off and just do like a little kickflip or something. These guys are doing incredible things with their bodies, and they need practice time because it's the first event of the year. Most, like Jake, hadn't practiced. Jake had never ridden a jump that big ever.
Well, that's what absolutely amazes me with this sport. It's not as if you have these courses set up at home that you can practice on. Well, not as far as I'm aware.
No. There's nowhere.
You put in your back garden or anything like that. So it must be pretty. Amazing to turn up there and ride a course and ride those kind of jumps for the first time and not having had the chance to kind of recce it, preview it before you go and know what you're going to do and go do all the training to make sure you're capable of doing that. So getting that time there is so critical, and any distractions really need to be removed, so you've got absolute time to focus on preparing for the big event.
Yeah, and like I say, I think there's two sides to it. Those riders, I'm sure, would want to put on a big event. They know that all the world's media are watching them, their sponsors are watching them, and they want to do the best. But for that, they need the practice time, and they need to feel that the course is safe. And I can see the other side for all the previous generations of slopestyle riders who have built the sport up from no TV coverage, nothing, to finding sponsors, to getting it to where it is now. I've seen a few posts from old school slopestyle riders going, "Oh, this is awkward."
And I guess the general public watching it. If you look at, I think Crankworx said themselves that the prize money has been increased. I think it's a 37% increase compared to 23. So, if you look at cost of living and other people, how we're having to cut costs here, and if they've had a 37% prize money increase, some people might not be that sympathetic. Who knows? Be interested to know what your thoughts are.
It's I'd say get down in the comments and let us know what you think. We're hoping that Jake is going to join us for an interview before he goes to the next round and give us some context on this. It's at the moment he's just asked for a bit of space because it's all very, very crazy at the moment. Everyone's still finding their feet. I think the media especially has picked up on the money aspect, where the riders were trying to push the narrative of safety and preparation. And
the one thing that kind of struck me, again, I don't know the specific ins and outs of it, and obviously only the riders and the organisers kind of know exactly what went on in the discussions. But I guess the one positive that came out for me is the ladies' event, the women's event, still went on.
Yeah, they did their thing,
and the men went and supported them.
Yeah,
they didn't just walk off and just abandon it. They actually stayed there and gave support. Which I thought was great.
You see the women finish, and all the famous men were all there cheering them on, and absolutely, and it's an amazing sort of vibe.
And to see the women competing at this level, I think this is the first time, correct me if I'm wrong,
first time it's been a women's diamond event, which is the very, very pinnacle. Interestingly, there's not actually that many women's gold or silver events either. There's not I think when Jake was doing his big tour, there weren't many events that actually had a women's category at all. And it's probably not until he got to Swatch 9s where he really started to,
Which surprises me because, I'm quite a keen skier as well and snowboarder, and you just look at women competing at that level, and they're competing and doing things to the same level that the men would do. So it's great to see this starting, and I really hope they have these kind of diamond category events and more women get involved. That'd be great to see.
They need to. I think the women really value that training time. That's the first time they've ever dropped into a diamond course. It must have been terrifying because, again, they didn't have a practice time.
You wouldn't see me doing it.
And I think watching the women's event, I mean, really, really inspiring. And you have to remember that this is the first generation of women riders, the first time they've dropped in without that preparation, and they were still pulling out some good tricks. I mean, I think they just need practice time. Vic was just watching and said those girls just need practice. They need time on these big jumps and they'll be up there, because when you watch it, some of them were not doing tricks on all the jumps. Some of them were coming up a little bit short on the jumps. Some of them, I don't think the jumps necessarily played to the women's gymnastics ability. But practice, they're going to be.
Oh no, I look forward to seeing them, the women and the men competing equally on going forward. I think this is a great opportunity, and my granddaughter's 3.5 and she's just got into biking, and I'd love to see role models. Maybe I don't want to jump off big jumps just yet, but the younger girls getting into cycling need some role models to inspire them that cycling is cool and it's too easy to get distracted, and you shouldn't be cycling. But any form of cycling is going to inspire youngsters to get out on their bikes.
Robin, the female winner, she was awesome. She interviewed so well on a camera, just talks freely to all the commentators, just loving it with the crowd. Her riding style was so smooth. You could just tell she's in control, just beautiful flowing movement, where the men's are quite aggressive and quite punchy. Her it was just beautiful to watch. So more of that, please. Crankworks. Okay, next thing, future of our YouTube channel. We are out celebrating this week.
Absolutely.
We're taking the whole team out for dinner. It's going to be a big...
Albeit you picked a Texan place for a vegetarian, which specialises in beef and barbecue. But
we're going to a Texan bar and grill. Sorry about that, Simon. But we're celebrating because we've hit 30,000 plus subscribers, which is a massive target for me because the population of our local town is 29,500. So in my mind, I just to outgrow our local,
which is Kendall. If we hear it in the Lake District,
it'll be pretty cool. And that came with almost at the same time 10 million views, which is bigger than the population of London.
Well, to put it in perspective, we hit 9 million views mid-February, and like a month later, we hit 10 million. I mean, it's just flying.
We've had some pretty good content out recently, which thanks for watching, and your comments have been amazing. I'm sorry that the content slowed down a little bit, but our team downstairs are sort of taking holidays and everything else. We are actually a functioning bike shop and a YouTube channel second. So customers always comes first. We don't always get content out on a regular basis. Maybe as we grow, that will change. We've got some pretty cool stuff coming as a rather nice Campagnolo super record teardown going on over there, which I think people are going to find very amusing. It's the best way to describe that. So content is coming. But it got me thinking, with all this growth we've got a lot more attention and some opportunities have been landing.
Yes.
Like the Look pedal review, for instance, and things like that. And also the inbox is flooded, like daily, with various Chinese factories saying, please will you review this?
And my inbox is now starting to fill up, Paul, as well, on my personal one. So they found my email address as well. So
I credit to these Chinese factories. I don't know how they do it, but they hunt you down.
Absolutely.
And it got me thinking about what we're going to do with the channel, because it'd be so easy to get overexcited. And I start rubbing your hand. Oh yeah, I'll have a free set of wheels. Or send me a free handlebar.
But I think it's really important. I think that we stick to our kind of key ethics and values, which I don't necessarily watches kind of maybe appreciates what they are. So it's probably worth just kind of reiterating what we're about, Paul, I think.
Yeah, for me, and it's not about pro-West or pro-East or anything like that, or expensive brands versus cheap brands. Because my ethics have always been set up a bike shop, is that people come to us as a bike shop to help solve problems.
Yeah.
And in my experience, generally speaking, things like Chinese wheels and Chinese frames create more problems than they solve. Mostly, not because necessarily the build quality, but normally the availability of spares. Now that chasm is going to widen, because now we've got the right to repair rules in Europe and obviously rolling out in the UK pretty soon as well. And interesting chat with our guys from DT Swiss and a few other European brands, that they're now having to, when they make a product, forecast what spares they're going to have to carry for the next 10 years.
Right.
And have to commit to it then. So when they send off a hub to be CNC'd, they've got to order
that
a forecast.
Forecasting is pretty hard going then to get
of spares.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a thumbs up for me, because because 10 years from now, someone is going to walk in here with a zip wheel that they brought 10 years ago and want it fixed. And if I could go, yes, I can fix that, it's going to cost this much. Yeah. That's good for a bike shop.
Absolutely.
What happens when people bring Chinese wheels to us is that they bring it in and we can't get spares. And we might call the factory and they might answer. They're normally very good at answering once. And then they don't answer the second time. And then they realise that they don't have the spare and everything goes really, really quiet. Not all the time.
So these are really disposables, and that's how these wheels are seen, or these parts, etc.
So how I've been dealing with influx of popularity is I've got a little criteria that said, look, I need to be able to go onto your website and I want to be able to see a diagram of the spares. I want to be able to buy an axle, a pull spring. I want to be able to buy a cable ferrule. If I can't see it on your website now, today, when the product is live, you've got no chance in 3 years' time.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
And I said, well, it's simple. Build it out and I'll review it.
Okay.
Do you know what? Interestingly, I don't know if you follow the channel called China Cycling. Really, really good YouTube channel. I'm pretty sure you guys have come across it. He specialises in just Chinese cycling stuff. And he went out to see Fast Sports. Fast Sports, big brand. Done a fantastic video, like touring the factory. Brilliant. I mean, like care, attention, quality control was all there. He sat down with the owner at the end, had a really good heart-to-heart with them. And she was like, I just want to make really good products. And I was like screaming at the TV. I'm like, that's great. Like, why can't I buy an axle off you? Yeah. Like, why is it so hard to buy a spare part?
You have good spares as well.
If you really want to support your riders, it's dead simple. Like, you can list it on your, why can't I just click and like get a spare axle delivered on like a 1 week delivery? Like, if you really care about your customers, just do that one little thing and I'll take you seriously. So yeah, that was a little bit of my ethic is...
Well, I think it's important. That's why we don't get into that. And I think the other point is that, we don't, none of the things we review, we're not getting paid to review. I mean, we're deliberately choosing to review things that we think that you guys will be interested in and that we're interested in and that we're passionate about. And I think sometimes we might get accused of favouring a certain brand, but that's typically because that's a brand that we work with. We believe there's a good fit, synergy between our two organisations and things.
Yeah. It's interesting. We have been offered to be paid to review something, and I've said no. I just felt uncomfortable. I didn't really have anything in mind. How are we going to do this? Like, free product is a little bit different. I don't mind speaking to you guys. Hey, look, we've had this free thing. Definitely not going to review stuff. And buy in a positive review. Yeah.
I think we do a pretty fair job. I mean, I think a good example, the look pedals, when you review
we paid for them. They're yours. They're on your bike.
Exactly.
You paid for them.
I paid for them my first time out of my pocket. Yeah,
and everyone was like, oh, what about this? And like, in fact, that look pedal is really interesting because I made one tiny comment you see about I think I said something exactly. The Asiomas are cheaper, but the battery life isn't as good.
You did.
Which is completely factual because the Looker claim in 60 was the Asioma. I didn't say the Asioma was bad battery life. Oh my God, did I get like, I didn't even say that 50 hours is bad. 50 hours, you'd have to service your suspension forks in the length of time it took you to like charge a battery. So come on, get real. People don't always listen, I suppose, do they? Just kind of hear the thing. But I like that. I like it if we've got to buy something, even if it's a reduced rate, something that we believe in, that we want to test, because when we're doing custom builds for people, that we've got an opportunity to ride it ourselves and say, actually, these are... I mean, the fast forward wheels is a great example. We've never, ever been sent a free pair of fast forward wheels. We've never, been paid or anything. They never even sent us a demo set. But I like them because...
If they tick the boxes and what we expect them to do and they fit with what we're trying to do in terms of the custom builds we're doing, then why wouldn't we? Absolutely. I think, there's things like the time bikes. We like the time frame, the speed that we get. Well, one of the things for us is we don't want to carry lots of stock. We're not that kind of bike shop. We're not carrying stock to the ceilings. We like to be able to order it just in time, if you like. And that's why we work with companies like Time, because it's really easy to get those frames. And the fact that, Frame also do it the unpainted, which gives us the option then to work with a custom
we've got
painting.
some very interesting stuff coming up with that as well. Yeah.
Be sure to check that out. Absolutely.
And I think that's actually a part of being sustainable business practice. A lot of the mess that the industry is in at the moment is, oversupply. And And if brands like Time, I know they're a bit specialist because they produce in Slovakia, and therefore the chain from factory floor to us is that much shorter. It's not coming from Taiwan, etc. But that's how we reduce wastage in this world.
Absolutely, and we obviously as a business, and unashamedly, we obviously promote map tech because that's who we are.
Yeah,
apologies for
shilling our own company. Sorry, guys. But I don't know. I think we need to keep revisiting our ethics.
It'd be great. I'd be interested to know, you guys viewing us. What would you like to see us do more of, less of? I'd be really interested because we're obviously keen to see what you want to hear more about.
We're always going to do the workshop content,
Absolutely.
Stuff that opportunities, because people uniquely, you guys bring us content, you bring us challenging things, and we try and film it and show you guys how we fix problems. That's going to be the mainstay of the channel. Some fitness content is drip feeding in there and getting some lovely feedback on that. And then as opportunities come, we sort of
that's the unique thing about the business that I really love is the fact we have the bike kind of shop where people come through the door with bikes that need work doing or they want to buy a new bike, and we have the channel, and the two go hand in hand and feed each other really. So we never know what's going to walk through the door. We never know what challenges or opportunities that we can then say, let's do some filming on that and show how we've solved that problem or addressed that particular customer's needs and requirements.
Yeah, if only we had the time to film everything.
Well, exactly. We'd be here all day filming away. But there is so much stuff going on downstairs, by the way, that you just don't see on the channel. Just solving simple problems, making people happy so they can go off and do their next sportif or their next race, or just delivering that perfect custom bike build that somebody's been dreaming about for ages in terms of the exact configurations, in terms of frames, components, etc. I mean, it's amazing how many, a number of downstairs I meet somebody that's just walking out with their bike and they're super happy. They've been looking forward to this. They've got their dream bike. It's new bike day. Happy days. It's great.
It's brilliant filming new bike days, isn't it? Maybe we should do a 10-hour stream one day of the full experience. I don't know.
Tell us what you'd like.
Okay, last one I want to end on. So Ollie from GCN.
Yes.
Little quote from Ollie from GCN, which I loved actually. He's going to get in so much trouble for this. A cheaper tyre at the optimum pressure will be faster than an expensive tyre at the wrong pressure.
Interesting comment, but I mean, I think there's an element of truth in it. Obviously, it depends on the pressures. I mean, how far off the optimum pressure you are. But I think from a rider point of view, it's something I've become much more aware of over the last few years is riding my bike with the tyres at the optimum pressure. Going back in the days, it was like you pump it up to 100 psi or whatever, and that was it. Now I'm much more in tune in terms of the size of the tyre, what the rim, etc., thickness, and the conditions, is it wet or dry, and I've paid a lot more attention to making sure I've got my tyres at what I believe are the optimum pressure, especially when I'm racing in time trials and things.
I mean, I've come from mountain bike and endurance background, so like tyre pressures, not so precious about my pressures, but and when I really started road biking, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago or something, it was like, wait, everyone just said I'll pump up to 100 psi and forget about it. Like, what? That really what we do? And I've been experimenting ever since, I think, but that's just the mountain biker's way of doing things, I suppose. But I think there's some truth in this and there's a lot of depends of how big the board it range.
Yeah. How bad that tyre is.
But if you took something like a Pirelli P0 race and a Pirelli P0 road, the road is the sort of the cheaper one, if you like. Absolutely. And there's about 10, 15 PSI difference. If you overinflate a TLR race, then I'm pretty sure that you could get a TLR road to perform better.
Yeah, I'd agree.
That I'd be like, yes. I reckon it would probably take the race one to be absolutely inflated to the max, and and the other one to be absolutely dialed in, so sweet. Maybe a little bit less in the front wheel, a little bit more in the back wheel. It'd have to be perfect, but I reckon.
Well, and the nuances of getting the tyre pressures right in terms of obviously rider weight, bike weight. I mean, the one tyre pressure for you is not the same as your mate who's riding next to you, and so quite often people, I ride at this, I better ride at that. No, you got to take consideration your weight, your bike weight, etc. And to be honest, I really do like the SRAM online tool just for giving you a good indication of what tyre pressure you should be riding at. For me, as a kind of user, that's a really easy way of just checking things. And
it's a good place to start, isn't it? And it's but just playing around, I still think loads of people just pump them up and just pray they don't get a puncture. that's like...
That's if they bother pumping them up. I mean, no, some people don't pump them up regularly, I think, as well.
Yeah, we do see all sorts here, I suppose. But I think there isn't really a really good tool for experimenting. That's what struck me. Like, we had that little electric pump we got sent once, and I dropped it somewhere, which is a real shame. It didn't have a pressure gauge on it though, so you still had to carry a separate pressure gauge. But I think if the industry really wants to get behind this, someone needs to invent like a little electric pump with a pressure gauge in it that's accurate enough that we can. Because no one wants to go for a ride and then just keep stopping every 10 minutes going, I'm just going to change my tyre pressures by half a PSI or something. No. You still want a bit of like, I just need to get out the door and go ride it.
Correct.
And I still think there's a bit of a technology gap between where the tyres and tyre pressures and rims are compared to the tools we've got available to us to get it right. I think you've got like tyre whizzes, haven't you, where you've got feedback and it'll come up on your Garmin display, but they're like 90 quid for a tyre valve.
But I still think there's a lot of opportunity. I mean, people are kind of fixating on how aero their bike is and the bars and everything, but this tyre pressure factor can make quite a big difference to the performance in terms of, your watts. If you're looking to save watts here, what you could save on having the right tyre pressure, even on your just general club ride, could make you much more efficient. Or make you more inefficient if you've got the wrong pressures on.
It's really common. Like the amount of times we probably see people spending a fortune on super lightweight components, like saving I saved 12 grams or something. I'm like, but you still got your tyre pressures up 115 psi. You could.
And just that subtlety of recognising you need different tyre pressures for a wet day versus a dry day. And that makes a big difference. I mean, it's such a touchy subject. I've touched on it a couple of times and it never went well because I don't think anyone really knows the answers. It's like trial and error, isn't it? It's like the ultimate trial and error science. And it's easy to get swayed. I mean, I'm part of a time trialing veterans race team and I listen to all the guys talking, I race with this pressure and I prefer this tyre. It's easy to get pulled left or pulled right, and sometimes you just got to kind of sit down and do a bit of reading and then make your own decisions. And then, as you say, try and measure it again and try it again. But like the tools to actually measure it and redo it and compare it, it's pretty hard to do that in a kind of meaningful scientific way.
Like, what are you looking for? What does optimum actually feel like? It's hard to know because someone says this is what optimum feels like. Now go and make your bike feel the same because you can't do that either.
Optimum might vary from person, but I mean, optimum might be comfort, it might be speed to another person, or it might be a combination of the two. So
I think for me, I've always gone for that confidence feel. There's normally a point where the feels like the bike will just do anything. You'll turn into a corner, it will hook up. You put some power down, it will lunge forward. And once you've got that, it's like, this bike feels like it's just performing. You've probably got it set up right. And sometimes it's a bit like mountain biking and their suspension. I'll take 5 psi out of my shock and like one more click of rebound.
But it's interesting the way, I mean, we're going to digress. I don't want to digress. But tyre widths, because, again, it's like 100 psi and your tyre width is this, whereas the thought of ever riding with a 28, was unheard of, but I started to do that, and I must admit, through the last few winters, riding with wider tyres has given me loads more confidence and hasn't slowed me down. In fact, it might have sped me up. So
it's bonkers. We've got a shelf full of 28 tyres downstairs. We can't shift, so everyone's now on the 30s and the 32. So it's like
shifting.
It shifts pretty quickly. I mean, 30s now seem to be pretty standard, and still having very interesting conversations with nearly everybody about tyre pressures and what they're finding. So I think experimenting is happening more than ever before.
Well, I'd love to hear what our viewers think in terms of what's your thoughts on tyre pressures, and what's your experience, and what would your advice be to others?
Are you 100 psi or bust kind of rider, or are you like, just take a little bit out here and put another pump in there? Let us know. Cool. I think that's it for this week, isn't it?
Oh, we've covered quite a lot there today, Paul.
There's quite a lot. Well, we missed 1 week and all of a sudden there's like loads of stuff going on. I think the next few podcasts, this is going to be, we're building up now, Spring Classics are coming to an end.
A lot of great racing. Don't get me going. I'm super excited about all the racing that's currently going on and about to happen. So
there's always those going to be new product releases just after one after the other now, isn't there? There's going to be a lot to talk about. And of course, Olympic year, it's just going to keep rolling. So it's going to be a pretty heavy year, I think, for stuff. Right. Thanks for listening, everybody. Take it easy, and we'll see you on the next one.
Cheers, guys.